Hello Tenno, Zelp here and welcome back. Today we are looking at effective health points, aka EHP for short. We will be talking about why it's a huge factor in the game and is armor skilling really broken. Let's start by understanding how you or enemies takes damage. Without shields or armor, the damage you take is pretty much whatever the damage is directed to you. Well, there is one exception in Warframe, which is health modifiers. But can Warframe really work with such simple mechanics? In my opinion, yes. Of course, after all, the Infested is an example of that, but not without some massive changes. Like without armor or shields, health points will most likely scale a lot more on both players and enemies. Naturally, with a large health pool, regeneration and healing methods may require to be based on percentage instead of flat values, and some abilities that scales off things like armor will need to scale off something else. However, even though there are many benefits in a simple structure, the game will suffer in the lack of customization and variety, like corrosive might not even have a reason to exist. I guess it is also not very logical for a character to put on protective gear and gain health points instead of some form of damage reduction, which leads us to the next topic. In Warframe, enemies with armor has their health bar colored in yellow instead of red. Armor is actually a pretty good balancing factor on its own because it reduces the incoming damage by a percentage. This means the more incoming damage it is, the more damage is being reduced due to armor. Armor scaling stops once the Warframe hits rank 30, but for enemies, armor scales continuously with their level governed by a formula. As the armor keeps getting higher and higher, the damage reduction value grows close to 100%, and that is where I believe the flaw of enemy scaling with armor lies. You see, in my opinion, Warframe contents was never meant to scale very high. Endurance run that lasts for hours was not meant to be a part of the game and is more of a player-made sport. A good example is the fact that the highest level in an extermination mission on the star chart only ranges between level 34 and level 38 on Pluto. For capture missions, the highest ranges between level 32 and level 36 on Sentinel. It was later that the release of Sortie started and level 80-ish content was introduced. When enemies with armor that has damage reduction scale close to 100%, they get a lot tougher. But first, let me explain how to calculate EHP. So the formula for EHP is the current health times bracket 1 plus the current armor divided by 300 close bracket plus the current shields. Now I know a lot of you guys can't really visualize or understand what that exactly mean just based on the formula, so I've created some cases to help you understand. Let's say you have a damage output of 1000 and your enemy has health of 1000 as well. If the enemy has a damage reduction of 20%, that means your 1000 damage now only do 800 damage, and it will take you about 2 hits to kill it. More accurately, it takes you 1.25 hits to kill the enemy. Now, if you were to take this 1.25 hits and multiply with your original damage, assuming that the enemy did not have any damage reduction, you would have done 1250 damage. And that is what EHP is. It's basically converting or merging the armor or shields into this pure HP for a good comparison. Let's take a look at a second scenario. If you are still doing 1000 damage and your enemy's health is still 1000, but this time he has 50% damage reduction, this means that you're only dealing 500 damage per hit, and you need a total of 2 hits in order to kill the enemy. Take that 2 and multiply by your initial damage. So assuming that if the enemy does not have any armor, or if you were to attack a different enemy without armor, potentially you should have been doing 2000 damage, and that is its EHP. The real problem here is when the damage reduction gets too close to 100%. So for example, over here at 98%, you need to do a total of 50 hits to kill the enemy, giving him 50,000 EHP. At 99%, just an increment of 1%, that number has doubled to 100,000 EHP. By increasing it just another 0.5%, that number is doubled again, and now you have 200,000 300,000, and at 99.9% it is 1 million. I think you see where I'm going with this, and the damage reduction can still increase. It could go to 99.99 and then maybe 99.999 and so on and so forth, and what will happen to the EHP is that it will scale towards infinity. But it'll never really reach 100% damage reduction because of how the formula is being constructed. However, it still gives a really large amount, and that's just ridiculous. Now I know what you're thinking. Zelp, let's say 99.9% damage reduction. It is really high. So how much armor does the enemy actually even need to achieve this? So over here I have the column for armor. And what this basically tells you is that if the enemy has 75 armor, it will have damage reduction of 20%. At 300, it will have a damage reduction of 50%, and so on and so forth. So in order to get a 99.9% damage reduction, the enemy needs to have around 300,000 armor. Now the next question is that, okay, 300,000 armor is a lot. What level does the enemy even need to achieve in order to get this amount of armor? So now I'm going to bring you to a different table. Now I kind of went a little bit overboard with this because I was trying really hard to visualize and see how it's scaling. But all I want you to picture or pay attention to is the armor, EHP, and also the level of the bombard. So this is basically a chart just on the bombard. So armor at 300,000 over here, 300,000, sure enough, damage reduction is 99.9%. And you can see that the level the bombard needs to be is about 800. Level 800 is really high, and for the majority of us, we don't have to concern ourselves with this, because even in sorties, the enemies may range up to, let's say, 100, and that will still be within the 97% damage reduction range. However, for a endurance runner, level 800 enemies is actually not that hard to come by. So let's take a look at an endurance run. Now I myself, I'm not an endurance runner, so what I did was I went to YouTube, looked for people that actually did it and recorded it, and I found this guy. He basically did the Ophelia survival for 14 hours. So let's take a look at it. Now what I basically did was, for every single hour mark, I listed down the enemy level around him and came out with this table. So basically, the moment he starts, the enemy is within about level 24, and after an hour, the enemy became level 115, which is an increment of 91 level difference. At the second hour, or if you want to say in minutes, is after 120 minutes, the enemy is now 374, which is a level difference from the first hour. Is 259, and what you realize from here is that the enemy is actually increasing in level exponentially, so it goes up really fast. And just on the third hour, the enemy has already reached levels of 1.2k. So what does this mean? It means that if there is a bombard over there, it will be within this range, okay, and it will have about 99.95% damage reduction, which comes to about 12 billion EHP. Now just think about that value for a minute. Next topic. Now let's talk about shields, because more shields also affects your EHP. However, it's not as much as what armor can do. Shields are basically external health that is not protected by armor, but the bright side is that shield could recharge when you're no longer taking damage. There are Warframe mods which regenerate shields as ability at cast, as well as gives you overshield that allows it to stack up an extra 1200 shield. When it comes to deciding which is better, shields or health, it really depends on what you're doing. Shields can be ignored by slash, toxin, and gas procs, which isn't very useful when fighting against infested. However, even if increasing health points makes your Warframe overall EHP more, the fact that health does not regenerate or recharge naturally means that shields can still ultimately give you more potential EHP. For example, if you're fighting in a mission where you could constantly take cover, like in exterminate missions or spy missions or rescue missions, then you can keep taking damage as long as it doesn't hurt your health, and potentially take an infinite amount of damage, more than that, by just increasing your health, simply because shield can recharge itself. But at really high level missions, when enemies skilled to the point where their damage can one-shot you, then getting the most EHP to survive that one hit becomes more important. And then hopefully you get yourself healed by some other means. If you like using melee weapons a lot, the Rage and Life Strike combo is also a very good and popular playstyle, fit for Warframes with large health pool. Once you have decided how you want to go about your Warframe, and you want to find out how you should mod to get the highest, best EHP for your build, I have a simple calculator for you guys to play with. So over here is the spreadsheet, and this part is more for the enemy. Basically, it calculates the effective health points of the enemy. There is this part which I added, and basically it calculates its current damage as well. Although the current damage formula is in wiki, but the base damage is not really listed properly, so it's kind of hard to find. Just put in all the information that you want. Let's say the base level of the bombard in this case, armor, base health. If it's a corpus, it will have base shields and it might not have armor, so just put that to 0. And then put in the current level that you want to check. So in this case, it's a level 100 bombard, and you realize that he has an EHP of 1 million. The next part here is for your Warframe. If you want to calculate as much EHP as possible, so let's say we have Ember here, and let's say you have only one slot left, so you can choose between things like maybe a Vitality or Redirection, or maybe even a Steel Fiber. You won't know until you put the values in, probably. So let's say if you want to test it with a Steel Fiber, it has a base armor of 100, so by having Steel Fiber, it bumped that up to 210, and it gives you an EHP of 810 in comparison of its default, which is 700. Now if you want to increase the base health or its health with Vitality, now Vitality gives you 440%, so here's 4.4, just put it in the green spot, 4.4, and you can see that it actually bumps up your health to 1620. And then since armor actually helps to keep the health safe, so it actually calculates a damage reduction combined and blah blah blah, you get an effective health of 2.4k. So let's say if you want to test with that final slot with Redirection, again Redirection is 440, so you realize that you actually get less effective health points. So in this case, if you're going for the most effective health points, you want to make sure that you are able to take that one shot, then health is probably the best way to go. And then also if you have only one slot. Now another one that I kind of want to show you is because for a lot of the Warframes that have similar base health and shield, you'll find that having more health is always better because the armor will always help with the health. So having said that, there are some Warframes that are not like that. So for example, by the way, I gave you guys a link here, and this link is basically the Warframe comparison. Make sure that you click on rank 30 to when you do the checking. So let's say if we were to take a look at something with high armor but less armor, like my favorite mag. So a mag has 225 health and 450 shields, and it has 65 armor. So let's put those values in, 65, 225 and 250. Now in this case, you'll realize that if you were to put Vitality in, 4.4, you only have 1.9k EHP. However, if you were to put a Redirection, 4.4 here, you'll get actually 2.7k, which is a lot better if you have only one slot. Now if you have two slots, then you might want to consider either putting both Vitality and Redirection like this, so 4.4, and you see you get 3.9k, or instead you want to boost your shields even more by putting, let's say, Vigor. So this one has 1.2 at the health there, and then you actually want to bump the shield as well, because Vigor also gives 120% on shields. So all you have to do is just add the numbers up. So 1.2 plus 4.4, this one you get 5.6, and then you get you see that it's 3.6. How much was it before? I don't remember. Oh, before it was 3.9. So this will be a better setup. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all it can do at this point. So for this part of the video, it's going to be more like a discussion where I share my ideas with you and also my weird theories. Well, hopefully you guys will have some good feedback to help me understand what exactly I'm looking at. So the things that we're going to talk about, it could be subjective, and it also could be things that we just couldn't find in wiki or some other source. If the things that I'm talking about and you could find it, please share the link or whatever with me down in the description or even at my Discord. So the first thing that I like to talk about is enemy level scaling. Now this actually bothered me for a very long time, because I did attempt to figure this out before in the past, like last year somewhere, but then I kind of give up, because turns out like in defense mission, survival missions, all the weird endless missions, they all scale enemy a little bit differently, and it's hard to get it perfectly right. I'm also not really sure if different maps of the same categories might even scale differently, because it starts off with a different enemy, like different level of enemies and things like that. But from that particular video of this guy doing the 14-hour survival, you could see that the first 4 hours it increases the enemy's level exponentially. That means it goes higher and higher, and it will keep going higher, like this curve. So technically you should continue up and go all the way up here, but instead after about 4 hours it starts becoming constant, and it averages out around 720 levels per hour. So my question is, why does it look like this? And I heard that in defense missions and other endless missions they are slightly different. So why are they different, and also why does it look like this? Now, the first theory that I have is that I know for a fact that it couldn't or shouldn't be a straight line, because if it's a straight line, that would mean that on the first hour mark itself, enemies will be like, let's say in this case, starting from level 24, will suddenly range all the way to level 740 or 50 something in just 1 hour, and that's just going to be too hard for the majority of us. And so that is probably one of the reasons why there's a curve here and then there's a straight line. There's also another theory that I came up with that I'm also not sure if that is the real case, is that this guy that did the 14-hour video, he did not extract at the 14-hour mark because he was too tired or anything like that. He actually extracted because enemies stopped spawning not long after they hit the 9,999 level. So I'm not too sure if that is like some kind of cap where DE has made such that enemies shouldn't be spawned after that level. But I did see some of the bombards at level like 10k ish in his video, but then shortly after, not too long, it just stopped. Now I'm thinking that maybe they're trying to prevent that cap from reaching too soon. So instead of going all the way up here, if I have a picture, I think I do. So let's say if I were to draw this over here, it will continue up like this, and before it even has the chance to pass 400 minutes, which is roughly about close to 7 hours, this whole thing is going to go off the roof, like straight up, and it's gonna cause all kinds of things. And I think that might be the reason why they also have to make it constant, otherwise this will happen. So in a way, I'm like asking, did they have this curve because they cannot have this straight line all the way down? Or did they have this straight line because they cannot have this curve all the way up? Now in terms of armor scaling and if it's broken, I would say not really. I mean, it works really well in the early levels, unless you are like a endurance runner. But if you really want to fix this, there is a relatively simple way to solve it. Similar to how crazy multi-shot or the pellets work with 100% status chance on a shotgun where every single pellet procs, you see in probability you cannot achieve 100% status chance if all of the pellet does not have 100% status chance as well. And it's just like you cannot have damage reduction scaling to 100% without having the enemy's EHP scale towards infinity. So simply set a cap. As the formula go, warning, you're gonna see some hideous handwritings because I don't know why on the tablet it just doesn't look good. So DR, which is damage reduction, equals to armor over armor plus 300, where 300 is the constant that they decided to go on. Now what this happens is, and what's happening right now is that as the armor scales to infinity, DR or damage reduction will scale to 1, or this is also considered as 100%. So this is the problem, because even if you have only one health, like one health point, but you have a damage reduction of close to or 100%, that will actually equal to an infinite amount of EHP. So that is the problem. Now what they need to do is they need to decide on a cap. So I would kind of recommend around 95% to maybe 98%. So let's work on 95%. What you have to do is just take 100%, okay, minus that 95% to get your 5%. And this 5% is the thing that you want to exclude in the formula. So what you're going to write now is that damage reduction equals to armor over armor plus bracket armor times that 5% and then plus 300. Maybe I should extend this all the way so that you know that's under that part. Okay, so what you're gonna realize is that for this whole section, as A scales towards infinity, you'll see that because this part, the lower part, this lower part will always be at least 5% larger than the upper part, which means that, and as it scales towards infinity, this is going to be negligible. So what will happen is that DR, damage reduction, will tend towards 95% or 0.95. And just by avoiding it from reaching 100% or 1, you sort of fix the problem. Ha, ha, ha. Changing the formula this way will affect the enemy at low levels as well, but it's not going to be significant. And for the final discussion, it's really just about what do you guys think of having the video made without background music while I'm talking. So be sure to share your thoughts down in the comments about all the questions and discussion that we just had. Also, I'd like to say that I'm sorry for uploading so late. I am really new at animation, and if you guys caught me on Twitch stream, you saw how a minute of a animation can take me 5 hours. So I'm really thankful for your patience, and if you like what you see, don't forget to share it with your friends. Roll outro. Hey guys, don't forget to like and subscribe if you deem the content worthy. Click on the bell icon to get notifications when I post a new video, and remember to share your thoughts down in the comments. There's a video in the description that tells you how you can win my glyph if you are interested. That is all guys, have a pleasant day, bye bye.